It is exactly 6 in the morning, and a caregiver's car won't start, or their child has a fever. They send a text to the agency, and a high-stakes timeline begins for a vulnerable client who is expecting someone at their door in 1 hour. When an agency is unprepared, the scheduler wakes up to a crisis. Without a preset plan, they start the morning in a state of frantic triage, scrolling through contact lists and calling anyone who might be awake to fill the shift. For the caregiver, the morning is defined by guilt. They know a client is now stranded, and the lack of a clear procedure makes them feel personally responsible for the service gap, a cycle that quickly leads to burnout. At the end of this chain is the client. They are often lying in bed, waiting for morning medication they cannot manage alone, or for the physical assistance required to safely start their day. This is a cascading operational failure. A single absence breaks the agency's equilibrium because the schedule relies on every person being in the right place at the right time, with no margin for error. Without a systemic safety net, the failure spreads. It stresses the caregiver, overwhelms the agency staff, and ultimately leaves the client waiting for support that isn't coming. Human emergencies are an unavoidable metric in caregiving. People will always get sick, which means client safety depends entirely on an agency's ability to shift from a personal crisis into a standard procedure. Let's look at that same 6 a.m. text at a different agency. Here, the team is guided by a documented emergency protocol. Instead of panic, they follow a definitive chain of command. The protocol assigns exactly who receives the alert and who is authorized to find a replacement, removing the hesitation that usually causes delays. This flowchart shows how systemic redundancy works. When a shift is blocked, the workflow automatically reroutes to a secondary backup pool and an on-call rotation. Tapping this dedicated pool allows the scheduler to secure full coverage for the client within minutes of the text. Structural failsafes handle the heavy lifting of logistics automatically. They transform a morning of frantic phone calls into a routine operational event. By 6:20 a.m., the shift is covered. Now, the agency moves to the external-facing pillars of the protocol to manage the client's experience. The first priority is always prompt communication. The goal is to reach the client and their family before they have even noticed a potential disruption in care. When an agency calls early to explain the substitution, it builds confidence. The client sees that the agency is actively monitoring their safety and has already solved the problem. Once the client is informed, the agency moves to the documentation pillar. This is the administrative work that ensures the crisis is recorded accurately for the future. This incident report focuses on objective data, the time of the call-off, the protocol deployed, and the final resolution. It provides accountability without making the caregiver feel like they are being punished for an emergency. Tracking these specific patterns over time allows management to see if a specific caregiver is struggling. It identifies the early signs of burnout so the agency can intervene before it leads to a resignation. While immediate communication protects the client's trust, rigorous documentation protects the agency's long-term ability to keep its staff. These two scenarios lead to very different outcomes. One agency's morning was defined by avoidable panic, while the other remained stable through the use of procedure. The second agency maintained uninterrupted care, removed guilt from the caregiver, and reinforced reliability to the client. These lines represent two types of agency operations. A rigid system shatters when it hits a disruption, but a flexible system bends, absorbs the impact, and returns to its baseline. A documented protocol acts as an operational shock absorber. It ensures that the actual structure of care never cracks, regardless of the individual emergencies that occur. Reliability is the result of protocols working in the background. They ensure that a caregiver's personal emergency doesn't have to become a client's medical crisis.